Hello friends, and welcome again to a Walk in the Garden Bible study. This is part 1 in our study of Genesis chapter 34. Now if you're with us for our last lesson, you remember we started looking at the first 5 verses of chapter 34, and we were noticing this daughter of Leah, Jacob's wife, one of Jacob's wives, this daughter named Dyna. And the Bible was relating to us a unique account that had happened there, and a very kind of a dismal, in fact the title of our last lesson was Dyna's Dismal Detriment, because of the situation she was going to find herself in and the reflection it was going to have and the upheaval it was going to create in her family. But we notice that, what did the Bible tell us in these first 5 verses? Well, it says that she went out to see the daughters of the land. And we were looking at some aspects of that. And not only did she just go out to see the daughters of the land and to get to know some of them, but we were also looking at the fact that she went out to be seen. And you know, that's what teenagers do. That's what young ladies do, is they go out. They don't just go out to visualize everything for themselves, but they go out to kind of show themselves off and to be seen, and maybe to be seen of the guys that are out there hanging around and so forth, and to kind of intermingle with the group, to become part of the crowd, to become part of the club in essence. And so that's what she was doing. She was wanting to get out and be part of the group and kind of get in the mix of things and get involved in things. And of course that's what we noticed. You know, a lot of times kids will maybe want to be liked, or maybe want to make friends, new friends, and maybe perhaps they get with the wrong group. And so they're already with the wrong group, and they're going to, now they've been maybe gone along with them, and they show up at a wrong place, and it's a place they know they shouldn't be. It's a place they know they shouldn't, wouldn't be approved by their family. But there they are. They're already there. They don't want to make a scene. They don't want to make it look like they have restrictions or anything. So they go ahead and participate in whatever activities are going on. And many times, again, it puts themselves in a strange environment, a unfamiliar environment, and it could be a place of jeopardy where they're going to be possibly taken advantage of or drawn into participating in things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. And so that's why it's very important for families to at least maybe not pick and choose the friends, but at least be familiar with their friends and be cognizant of, the things the places they're going and the things that they're doing. And if they know something about these individuals that maybe they don't necessarily want to have an influence, then that's when they have to have that discussion and make that decision, possibly to not be included in that group anymore. And so sometimes kids make the wrong decisions because they want to fit in, they want to be liked, and they want to be popular. And for whatever reasons, they just sometimes will, even though they know in their heart of hearts that it's not right, they'll go ahead and submit to it just in order to be, accepted. I mean, that's really what most young people are wanting. And that's why they do a lot of the things they do. That's why they dress the way they dress. That's why they participate in certain activities that they know is wrong, but they want to be accepted by the group because they're very self-conscious, and that's a very important facet to them at that point in their lives. They just feel like that's the most important thing, is to be accepted by their peers. So it is a battle. It is a battle, and it is a challenge, not only for them, but also for the families to overcome those barriers and to provide, other activities or other groups that they know what they approve of, and just different things that are going to provide for a more positive outcome. And so it is a work. It's a job. And it's a job for every parent. And unfortunately, a lot of parents nowadays just don't want to carry out that job. They don't want that responsibility, and they would rather just give in and submit and basically let the kids do what they want, rather than to get involved and actually have to do something, have to actually do what their job is as a parent. And so it's a really sad thing. So we don't know if all that exactly was what was happening here with Dyna, but we do know that, it tells us that she went out to see the daughters of the land. And so what's the next thing we see? Well, we know that she wanted to be part of the group. She wanted to be, and she wanted to be noticed, and so she was noticed. And who was it that noticed her? Well, it was none other than Shechem, the prince of the country. Well, now, what young lady would not want to be noticed by the prince of the country? What young lady wouldn't want to be, in his favor and popularized and possibly have him ask you to go out and get something to eat, or ask him to be your, his companion for the night, or just to hang out together. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, that would be a great honor, and that would be really show that you're somebody if you're hanging around with this prince. And so it probably wasn't too hard for her not to say no. I mean, if he came and asked her to be an escort, or asked her to, accompany him, or whatever the conversation was, well, it'd be very hard for her to say no to something like that, just knowing who he was and what position he was in. And so that's what happened. He noticed her. He noticed her. And he was a man of notoriety and power, and possibly in line to the throne of the nation. So it would be a great honor to have him as, being your accompaniment for the night. And he not only liked what he saw in Dyna, but he also saw an opportunity. Maybe he saw her innocence. Maybe he saw that she was kind of the loner and not really having any attachments to anybody else. Maybe he felt like there was no accountability going to be required, and that he could basically just, have his way. And so he saw an opportunity, and he saw an opportunity to fulfill his lustful intentions. Now, was that his intention from the beginning, or was it something that developed through the course of the evening? Because a lot of times there may not be those intentions, from the get-go, from the very start. But through the course of events and through the course of the evening, and after certain activities are participated and so forth, then those things can develop and can conjure up in a guy's mind, and the next thing you know, he's trying to take advantage of this girl. And so that's exactly what happened. What does it tell us? It says that he saw her, he took her, and lay with her, and defiled her. Now notice that's the order that's in. It's just, again, it's the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. His pride enter in because he's like, well, I'm a prince. I'm heir to the throne. I'm a leader and a manager in this land. And basically, if I see something I want, I can take it. I can take it and do what I want with it, and nobody's going to say anything contrary to that because of who I am. It's my right. And as part of my kingdom, as one of the citizens in my kingdom now, well, then they're subject to my decisions and my choices. And what about the lust of the eye? What does it say? It says he saw her. He took her, and then the lust of the flesh, and he defiled her. So it's the same old things. It's the same old things from the very beginning. It's the same things that continue today that interrupt people's lives today, and that take people down the dredges of sin today. It's the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. But it started with a look. She went out to see the daughters of the land, He went out to see the daughters of the land. And what he saw, he liked, and he liked so much that it says he took her. Now, I don't know if that meant it was strictly by force, or did he entice her? Did he lure her? Or did she just get convinced that she wanted to go along with him? Or did it get started one way and then things got out of hand and went too far? Well, we don't know exactly. But what we do know is that it happened. It happened, and the lust was fulfilled, because it says that he defiled her. So the next thing we see is that he seizes the opportunity, and the deed was done. The act had taken place, and whether consensual or by force, the relations were made that day. And again, if somebody commits that act, well, that's not something that can be undone. I mean, if somebody steals a item from a store, well, they could restore that. They could give it back, they could pay for it, they could make it right. But this type of act, it can't be undone. I mean, once it's done, it's committed, and it's basically sealed. It's done. And it can't be, I mean, you can try to compensate somebody for it, or you can try to, they used to have what they call shotgun weddings, because after they found out that something like this had happened, well, then they wouldn't at least follow through and make them do what they felt was the right thing, and that was for them to get married because of the act that had already been committed. And so it's out of sequence. The consummation act, that's what consummates a marriage. It's not to be, and anything else is either fornication or adultery, which is sin. I mean, that's just the way it is. Because the only way you can consummate the consummation act and complete it properly is it is part of the marriage process. And so when you come together like that and you consummate the marriage, well, then that's what you're doing. But if you do it outside of the bonds of marriage, then it's either fornication or it's adultery, and it's sin. And so that's why the Bible tells us that he defiled her. And that word defiled, I think I've got it down here, but what it means is it means he polluted her. He made her dirty. He made her unclean. And that's exactly what the result of that act is. And he got things out of sequence, because it's going to go on to tell us that he clave to her, that he loved her, he spoke kindly to her. He did all of these things. Well, those are all things, all good in themselves. Those are all things that should be done, but those are all things that should lead up to an engagement, to a marriage, and then to the consummation of the marriage. But he got the things out of sequence, and that never ends well. And what do we see in today's society? Well, that's exactly what happened. People are ignorant of God's word, or they don't believe God's word, or they just don't care about God's word. But it's become an epidemic in our society. It's become an epidemic worldwide. I mean, I think the last I knew was that, I don't know the percentages. I mean, they're all over the board, but it's probably more than 50% of babies born are out of wedlock or to single mothers. Or if they do get married, many of the marriages are only lasting short term. They're only lasting at the most a few years. And so either way, but a lot of it is, these babies being born out of wedlock is because of people putting the cart before the horse. We live in a society now where it's commonplace, and it's even become more or less an accepted form of behavior just to shack up, what we used to call shack up, where people living together. They're just living together. They're staying together. And we're seeing more and more couples that are no longer actually getting married. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want the attachment. They don't want to, they're afraid, well, if we decide to break up, I don't want to have to pay for child support or alimony or whatever. And they just don't, they're not going into the relationship with the idea that it's a lifelong relationship, that it's long term, as the Bible tells us that it should be. But they're just going into it with no commitment whatsoever. And that's what they don't want. They don't want a commitment. They just want the relationship. They want to have fun. They want to have a fling. They want to hang out together. And if a child is born, or two children, or whatever, well, that's okay. But then when I'm tired and ready to move on, then I'm going to move on. And so we're seeing an epidemic of, children being born out of wedlock. We're seeing an epidemic of single parenting. We're seeing an epidemic of divorces at a highest rate that they've ever been recorded. And it's just, if you don't go by God's plan, then it's never going to be a successful society. I mean, if you go buy a lawnmower, and every lawnmower, or pretty much every appliance, or every utility or whatever comes with an owner's manual, even a car, and a car comes with an owner's manual. And that's there to tell you the right way to treat your car, to tell you how to maintain your car so that it'll be long lasting, and it's just there to inform you of the best overall condition, how to keep your car in its best overall condition for long-term use. And all of the information is there that you need. And why is that information so accurate and so useful is because it's provided by the manufacturer. It's provided by the people that manufactured and designed and made that appliance or made that car. Well, so it is with life, with human life. You know, our Creator created us, but He didn't leave us to our own devices. He gave us our owner's manual. He gave us all the information we need to live a successful life, to live successfully one with another, to create successful societies and successful countries and successful environments. He gave us all that in our owner's manual. That owner's manual is God's Word, the Bible. And the problem we have is, just like if you buy an appliance and you don't read the information, you don't read the instruction manual, and if you mess it up, you forget to put the oil in, you forgot to do the break-in period, or you forgot to lube the hinges, or whatever the case is, you used too much detergent in the washer, whatever the case is, well, guess what? It's either going to break, or it's going to cut down its lifespan, or it's not going to work as effectively as it should, because you're not following the owner's manual. You're trying to wing it. You're trying to do it on your own. And a lot of things are really screwed up when they're not done by the procedure. You know, in the military, they have what they call technical data, and they have technical orders, and those are guidelines that you have to follow explicitly, because you're talking about multi-million-dollar aircraft that could easily crash and burn if they're not maintained properly. And you're talking about lives at stake. And so you have to, you know, they have quality assurance, they have all kinds of inspections and everything else to make sure that things are being done correctly according with the tech data. And the problem with our society today is people have ignored, or they've rejected the tech data, so to speak, the information manual, the owner's manual that God has provided with His Word that shows us how we're to live our lives and how to be successful in life. And so that's where we find ourselves, is we've got epidemics of all kinds of sorts, and they're not good sorts. They're all negative and evil and sinful things. So Shechem, Prince Shechem, had put his cart before the horse, and whether in true nature or as a result of the incident, he now feels the love for her like never before. So, was it love at first sight? Or was it lust at first sight? You know, that's what we have to ask. But for whatever, you know, afterward, and did he love her afterward because of what had happened? Or was he truly just, that was an act out of love in his mind, and or maybe he just now wanted to do the right thing. He realized what had taken place, and perhaps she was distraught about it. She was downhearted about it. She was embarrassed and convicted about it and ashamed. And so he wanted now to do the right thing. And that can happen. That happens a lot. When people get in that situation, they want to do the right thing, and they do eventually get married, but it could have been so much smoother, so much easier, and so much better for the family if they'd done it the right way in the first place. Because really, it's when they do something like that, it's not just disrespecting the girl, but it's also disrespecting the girl's family. You've got no concern about her family. You've got no concern about her relatives or how she was brought up. I mean, they brought her up for 16 or 18 years or whatever. They put a lot of time and effort into her. They put principles in her. They try to teach her the right things. And then in one lustful moment, you're going to take that away from them? Well, that's a very extremely disrespectful thing to do. That's an evil thing to do if you want to know the truth. And so whether out of pure physical attraction, or perhaps after he got to know her on a personal level, he now wanted her badly for a wife. And so what does he do? Well, we see the next thing he does is he goes and speaks to his father about it. Now, I don't know if he shared with him, you know, what had taken place. But what he told him is he told his father, Hamor, he says, hey, I found this girl. I love her. And she loves me, and I want to take her as my wife. And he says, you know, please get me this girl for my wife. Why does he tell his father? Well, he knows he needs to speak to her father. He needs to speak to her family. And he's just assuming that, well, I don't want to go to him, so I want my dad to handle this for me. And plus him being the king, he should be able to handle it with no problem. With his authority and with his position and his title and so forth and his riches and so forth, there should be no problem for him to get me her for my wife. So what is it we see next? Well, the word gets out. And when something like that happens, it doesn't take long for word to get around. Whether somebody shares it with a friend, whether somebody shares it with a family member, or whether it's just known to have happened, the word gets out. And soon everybody knows about it. And soon, guess who knows about it now? Jacob, her father. What does the Bible tell us? It says, and Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. And then it goes on to say, now his sons were with the cattle, with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. Well, that had to be devastating news to him and Leah and the rest of the family. And that had to disturb him to the core. And I'm sure it got his wrath up. It got his wrath up. His anger was kindled. And he probably most likely wanted to take care of business and take care of it swiftly. But he wanted to wait till the rest of his family got back in. And he wanted to wait till his sons came in. And then they were going to have a little confab about what had taken place. So Jacob had heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter, and the tidings spread like wildfire, and the news came to Jacob's ears. And he was grieved as any parent would be, but he was angry as any parent would be. His precious daughter, one that he had raised from an infant, and think about it, they had celebrated her birthday every year. They celebrated her birthday. They had great expectations for her. They had high hopes for her. They felt like she had a great future. And now in an instant, everything had changed. Everything was turned upside down. And this is the one that he had bounced on his knee as a baby. He'd watched her grow into a young lady. And now she had been taken advantage of. And whether by invitation or whether by force, he knew one thing. And what does it tell us? It says that his daughter had been defiled. She'd been made unclean. She'd been made dirty, and she'd been polluted by unseemly means. Which is a very big deal, an extremely big deal. It's nothing to shirk. It's nothing that would be taken lightly. It's nothing that would be swept under the rug and just brushed off like we see so much going on today. It seems like people just, it doesn't affect them. When sin becomes so prevalent in a society, then the more horrible sins that are committed, then the sins that used to be considered horrible are not so horrible anymore. They're more accepted. Some of these things that are going on today, 50 or 60 years ago, would have had riots going on. They would have had, people thrown in jail. There would have been people taking vendettas against people. It just wouldn't have been allowed to continue. But now today, it's just we turn a blind eye and say, well, that's not as bad as what's going on over there. But back then, it was extreme. It was very extreme. And the next thing we notice is Jacob's response. What does it say? It says he would maintain his peace until his sons would come in from the field. He would not take action. He would not make an immediate judgment until he would take counsel with his family. And of course, that's always a good thing to do when anger arises, rather than, especially if you don't have all the facts. There's two sides to every story. And that's what I try to tell people. I say, look, if there's some kind of relationship going on between two people, and you're only in maybe one side of that is your relative, well, naturally your tendency is to side with the relative. But you just got to keep in mind there's two sides to every story. And if you don't know both sides, you can't really make an accurate judgment call on it, because there may be more than meets the eye, or more that you're hearing about from the side that you're hearing. And so it's not a bad thing to take counsel with the family and get a consensus on what should be done and how it should be done. But surely Jacob was stunned when this happened. He was without words and was just beside himself at what had just taken place. And it was probably quite likely that he wanted to verify these rumors and the alleged incident that it had actually taken place. And so here we can observe an important principle, and that is that things never go well when the authority of a parent runs low in a family. Let every man bear rule in his own house, and have his children in subjection with all gravity. You know, when there's a breakdown in the parental authority in a household, whether it be a single parent or a double parent, and that's why one reason there is a lot of more chances of things going sour and going bad when a single parent family, because they don't have those two sides that they need for a balanced upbringing. And so when there's a breakdown of authority, when people aren't willing to take that responsibility, they're not willing to put their foot down, they're not willing to have those conversations, they're not willing to show or bring up a child in the admonition and nurture of the Lord, then things usually don't ever go very well. I mean, occasionally they can turn out okay. Occasionally the kid can still make it through and still survive all of that. I've seen it. But I would say in the majority of the cases, they just don't turn out well. And it's, when a child grows up, they're going to have to make their own choices, their own decisions. But a lot of that foundation is set when they're young. It's set when they're small, and even set in the teenage years. And they have to have some groundwork laid in order to be successful as an adult in their life. So that, did that lead into this? I mean, was there, some parental breakdown there? Well, we don't know all of the background there that led up, but we do know what had taken place. And so in the next verses, what we're going to see is the outgoing or the outgrowth of this incident, and we're going to see what Jacob's decision is and how they're going to handle and react to this grave thing that has just happened. So we'll see that next time in verses 6 through 17. And that's where we'll pick it up in chapter 34 next time. Hope to see you then. Thanks.